This is CBC Vancouver News.
And, this has been a virus that's been on the radar to cause epidemics or potential pandemics.
The first ever human case of H5 bird flu in Canada has been detected here in BC, why experts say it's cause for concern. Also,
been paying around 4 or 5 grand now with the repairs, and I still have to repair the ice machine.
business owners and residents in a North Vancouver neighborhood are out thousands of dollars after a power surge from Monday's windstorm destroyed dozens of appliances and electronics. And
what we're doing with our planting events is essentially creating a really nice, dense, lush, healthy shrub understory layer to support those conifers being able to grow.
The jewel of Metro Vancouver parks is getting some much-needed TLC. How a group of volunteers are digging in to help restore the landscape in Stanley Park. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Janella Hamilton. The province says a BC teen has tested positive for what is presumed to be the first human case of H5 avian influenza to be caught in Canada. In a statement today, the provincial health officer confirms the patient is a teen from the Fraser Health region who is now receiving care at BC Children's Hospital. An investigation into the source of the infection is underway to determine how the virus may have been contracted and to identify any people the patient may have had contact with recently. Dr. Isaac Bogosh is an infectious disease specialist. He says bird flu is a concern because it has the potential to cause significant clinical harm in humans.
When we look at the last 20 years of this infection, there's been a huge selection bias, meaning only the sickest cases have come to medical attention. And even with those cases and with that bias, it has a high case fatality rate. But we know that, obviously there's a large spectrum of illness. When we look at the people in the United States who have been impacted, fortunately, most have been on the milder end of the spectrum. And we also know it's a pathogen where the concern is if it's in mammals, either humans or dairy cows or pigs or other animals, it can, what we say, reassort, and it can pick up mutations to make it more readily transmissible. And this has been a virus that's been on the radar to cause epidemics or potential pandemics. And this is why it's so concerning whenever you see it in mammals, especially in humans.
Officials are urging residents to avoid direct contact with sick or dead animals, keep pets away from affected wildlife, and report any dead or ill birds or mammals to provincial authorities. In 2014, a Canadian resident died of H5N1 after returning from China. Contract negotiations in a labor dispute that has paralyzed container shipping at BC ports since Monday have been called off. The BC Maritime Employers Association says they and the International Longshore and Warehouse Union Local 514 met separately with a federal mediator today, and there was no progress made. The association says no further contract talks are scheduled. The two sides were originally scheduled to meet for 3 days in mediated talks this weekend to try to urgently resolve the ongoing lockout. The union, which represents more than 700 longshore supervisors at ports, including Vancouver, Prince Rupert, and Nanaimo, has been without a contract since last March. Federal Labor Minister Steve McKinnon intervened earlier this week to speak with leaders on both sides, asking them to restart talks. Nearly 10,000 people in Abbotsford have been told to boil their water after E. coli was detected in the water supply on Thursday. Yesterday, an advisory was issued for households in the Clearbrook Waterworks district. The notice warns the bacteria can make people sick, especially babies, seniors, and people with weakened immune systems. Residents are urged to boil their water for at least 1 minute or use bottled water. The district is in the process of disinfecting its reservoir and will inform people when no bacteria is found. A number of residents in a North Vancouver neighborhood say they are out thousands of dollars after Monday's windstorm caused a power surge that fried appliances and electronics. Saurabh Sandhu has more on the damage.
Monday was Ines Diaz's first day in operation as the new owner of Cornerstone Bistro. Around 1 in the afternoon, she heard a loud boom down the street.
It was pretty scary actually because we were running with stuff. It was the middle of the day. And then we heard this boom that was like a half block from here.
Power went out, and when it came back on the next day, Diaz discovered multiple appliances were broken. The Italian espresso machine, walk-in fridge, blenders, lights.
I've been paying around 4 or 5 grand now with the repairs, and I still have to repair the ice machine. So I don't know how much it's going to be at the end.
Several neighbors also went through the same experience when the power came back on.
Our 2 refrigerators here, 1-year-old, freezer and regular refrigerator, didn't come back on.
But it was not just the refrigerator. Lights, dimmers, thermostats, the boiler, and a microwave inside the house were also broken.
The whole street the day after was full with service guys. If it wasn't for the Wi-Fi, then it was for everyone's boilers or furnaces.
BC Hydro says at the height of the storm on Monday, 20,000 customers in North Vancouver were without power. They say a transformer in the Pemberton Heights neighborhood was damaged during the storm.
If there's some sort of a surge, it's usually caused by a phase that's coming into our house that gets broken. If you have, electronics plugged in, they can now start to see more power than what's actually available, and so that can cause them to malfunction.
BC Hydro says this week's windstorm was its 4th most damaging in a decade. The utility says its claims teams is working with a handful of customers that have been in touch. And those like Ines Diaz hope this is just a temporary setback.
Hopefully this is going to be the worst week ever, and from here we build up.
That's right.
Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Vancouver.
The search for a Surrey teen who has been missing for more than 2 weeks continued today, with family and friends scouring a local park.
Initially, it was definitely very hard to accept the fact that my brother had gone missing, but I think now that I know that there's so many people here that are willing to help and willing to support, I'm feeling more and more hopeful that we'll find some sort of answers.
RCMP say 18-year-old Joseph McCoo was reported missing on October 23rd. Investigators say he boarded a number of transit buses on October 22nd afternoon between 3:50 and 6:30 p.m. near 120th Street and King George Boulevard. Anyone with information is asked to contact police. A BC man has been arrested in connection with an alleged fentanyl super lab in Alberta. Police believe the lab was a major source of dangerous opioids for much of Western Canada. Investigators say they spent 4 days dismantling the lab and searching the property near Valley View last month. 55-year-old Stephen Mogg from Kelowna has been charged with production of a controlled substance and possession of fentanyl for the purpose of trafficking.
This investigation was a major undertaking, and this may be one of the most important investigations in the history of Alert. I say that because we understand and know the consequences of fentanyl and how tragically it has harmed our communities and how we've all paid the price.
Police say an estimated $700,000 worth of fentanyl was seized during the operation, as well as more than 4,000 liters of suspected chemicals used in drug production and 1,500 liters of chemical waste. It comes a week after Mounties located what they call Canada's largest super lab on a rural property in Falkland in BC's Columbia-Shuswap region. A stormy Remembrance Day weekend is in store for parts of BC's south coast, with heavy rain and strong winds expected to roll in tomorrow afternoon into Monday. Environment Canada says Metro Vancouver, the Fraser Valley, and sections of Vancouver Island could see rainfall of up to 40 millimeters. It comes with a risk of flooding in low-lying areas. Officials are encouraging residents to clear leaves from storm drains and be on alert for possible washouts near rivers and creeks. Sunday's storm adds to a series of intense weather events hitting BC's coast this fall. A windstorm earlier this week left thousands without power. Authorities are urging people to be careful around fast-moving rivers as conditions could change rapidly throughout the weekend. All right, let's take a look now at our forecast. Let's begin with a peek at that precipitation map. As we can see, that green moving throughout the province into even later this week. So we are going to see quite a rainy week for much of the province this week. And of course, those strong winds heading into Monday. Taking a peek at tomorrow's cast, Dease Lake, snow flurries and a -4 for tomorrow. A bit warmer in Fort St. John with a mix of sun and clouds and a -2 for tomorrow. 4 in Prince George and 11 and rainy on the island in both Tofino and Victoria. And Metro Vancouver, again, rain and more rain with a high of 12 for tomorrow and similar conditions throughout the rest of the week. Volunteers braved that rain today to help restore part of Stanley Park's vegetation after the Vancouver Park Board says up to 30,000 trees have to be cut down and removed due to the hemlock looper moth infestation. But as Pinky Wong reports, a conservation group is hoping to replenish Metro Vancouver's crown jewel through a planting initiative.
What they're carrying are pots and pots of hope to revive the plantation around Lost Lagoon. Almost 500 plants are being sown into the ground at the hands of people who call this place special.
I actually do a Sunday 10K run Stanley Park every week, and I've been doing that for 5 years now. So I hold Stanley Park quite dear to me. I just want to see it flourish and kind of stay green.
This conservation manager says the area was once taken over by the Himalayan blackberry, an invasive species.
I think last year we removed the equivalent of 59 dump trucks worth. Wow. So it's quite a large amount, a huge volume.
He says after habitat loss, invasive species are the second greatest threat to biodiversity. And this park has seen a lot of loss lately, with roughly 30,000 trees being removed due to damage from a looper moth infestation.
People are concerned about trees, and the city has actually done a great job planting tens of thousands of saplings currently. So what we're doing with our planting events is essentially creating a really nice, dense, lush, healthy shrub understory layer to support those conifers being able to grow.
Roughly 14 volunteers came out Saturday to plant more than a dozen native species, which they say provides ecological resilience.
So what I'm looking for is these nice root strands to become loose and free.
For Valeria Lobos, it's a way to make a difference.
There's been lots of fires and lots of changes there. Just it makes you feel like you're contributing a little bit to restore what has been affected.
It's not just about planning, but about planning what is right. I didn't know about the invasive species, and many times I've seen them, and I think, oh, nice, that there's blueberries growing or whatever that species is. But now I'm starting to understand what the impact to the local ecosystem that is.
Participants are asked to plant a cluster of the same species of plants in one area because some species would compete against each other for resources. So by doing that, they'll increase the chance of surviving and flourishing. Pinky Wong, CBC News, Vancouver.
Still ahead, at least 26 people are dead, including soldiers and railway staff, after a bombing at a busy rail station in Pakistan. That's next. Stay with us. Donald Trump's election victory has cast uncertainty on the Allied effort backing Ukraine against Russia. Today, Canada's Deputy Prime Minister weighed in on the issue, and so did a member of the Trump camp. And the tone was very different. The CBC's Paige Parsons reports.
The war back home is always top of mind for Ukrainian refugees in Edmonton.
We just want to sometimes scream to the whole world, please don't forget about us.
Nearly 2 years after Russia's invasion and 11 since the region of Crimea was annexed, the future of Ukraine is uncertain in the wake of this week's United States election. The Joe Biden administration supports Ukraine along with NATO allies, while the president-elect has frequently criticized the billions of dollars in weapons and financial aid the U.S. has sent overseas for the war effort. A Trump official gave some insight into the president-elect's thinking in this BBC interview.
So now when Zelensky says, we will only stop this fighting, there will only be peace once Crimea is returned, we've got news for President Zelensky. Crimea is gone. And if that is your priority of getting Crimea back and having American soldiers fight to get Crimea back, you're on your own.
Undeterred, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland pledged Canada's next step in pushing back against Russia.
Now is a moment when it is more important than ever for Canada to be very clear that we support Ukraine, to be very clear that Ukraine must be victorious and that Putin must be defeated.
Freeland revealed a new tactic the government is pursuing.
The time has come for us to be decisive about pushing Russian oil out of the world market.
Trump hasn't yet said how he wants to see the conflict resolved, but an analyst says it's likely he'll want to start negotiations right away.
Trump has made it clear that he wants to end the war sooner rather than later, which means that he's going to be putting a lot of pressure on Zelensky to come to the bargaining table at a time when the war is not going very well for Zelensky.
Freeland's pledge to keep helping Ukraine fight Russia through economic and other measures earned her a standing ovation. But it's not yet clear whether she'll have the United States government backing up that plan. Paige Parsons, CBC News, Edmonton.
Israeli airstrikes hit Gaza again today, and they came with renewed warnings of imminent famine in the enclave's north, and with agencies demanding more aid be allowed in. The CBC's Ellen Morrow has the latest.
The panicked rush to save the wounded after an Israeli airstrike near a makeshift camp in Gaza. We came here after being displaced, Mohammed Wadi says. We are not safe, day or night. With Israel's renewed operations in the territory's north, aid agencies are releasing stark warnings over worsening humanitarian conditions. Famine is likely imminent in some areas, say global food security experts in a new report the World Health Organization called deeply alarming.
We really need to have more access. We need to have more security. We need to ensure that once that supplies that enter Gaza are able to reach everywhere inside Gaza.
Israel faces a Tuesday deadline from the Biden administration to increase aid or face possible limits on U.S. military assistance. It's also under pressure over a new UN report finding nearly 70% of UN-verified fatalities in the first 6 months of the war were women and children. More than 43,000 Palestinians have been killed since the fighting began, says Gaza's health ministry.
It is essential that there is due reckoning with respect to the allegations of serious violations of international law.
Israel has repeatedly accused Hamas of hiding among civilians, and it's rejected both reports, releasing this image of an aid truck being unloaded, and Israel says it will open a new border crossing to increase the flow. 713 aid trucks have entered northern Gaza since the beginning of October, according to Israeli figures. Before the conflict, aid agencies say some 500 went into the territory every day.
It's good to see you. Very good to see you.
On the diplomatic front, Qatar says its mediation efforts are on hold until both sides show more willingness to reach a deal. It denied reports that it's asked Hamas officials to leave the country. With ceasefire and hostage release talks stalled, the suffering drags on. More than a year of war, the pain unbearable for so many. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Washington.
In Pakistan, more than 24 people are dead and over 60 others wounded after a bomb attack at a busy railway station. A militant separatist group that's been waging a decades-long insurgency is claiming responsibility. The CBC's Jennifer Yoon has more.
A bomb blast at a busy train station in the city of Quetta in southwestern Pakistan. Civilians and soldiers among the dead and injured. People were running here and there in chaos. Some had blown up legs, arms, and hands, says this eyewitness.
2 minutes के बाद blast हुआ है.
2 people who were with me got injured, says this man, also hurt in the blast. He says others were with him, but he's not sure what happened to them. Pakistani officials are still counting the dead. At least 26 are confirmed killed and more than 60 injured.
Security agencies ने जो इब्तदाई report.
Initial evidence suggests this was a suicide attack, say local authorities. The attack claimed by the Balochistan Liberation Army, an ethno-nationalist militant organization operating in the province. The region has seen a surge in violent strikes by separatist militants. Balochistan has a wealth of natural resources, but its population of almost 15 million among the most impoverished in the country, fueling a great sense of grievance, say analysts.
The lack of development, the lack of economic opportunity, and the way in which the resources of this province have been distributed across a federal government, and the way the demands of the Balochi people have not been addressed by the federal government of Pakistan. And for that, I think the Pakistani government needs to take complete and full responsibility.
Mufti is not concerned the violence will spill over to the Canadian Pakistani diaspora. But she says the rest of the world should be watching. Pakistan is already a very unstable country, and what happens there could have wide-reaching impacts around the world. Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
Here we have a time lapse of the rain in Vancouver today with more rain and strong winds on the way. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This is Vancouver is a new CBC podcast where we explore the issues, the stories, and the people that make this place home. Listen to This is Vancouver wherever you get your podcasts.
Rubik's Cube fans squared off at an event in London this weekend to celebrate its 50th birthday.
The cube able to reach people on the same level as it did 50 years ago.
That's Erno Rubik, the Hungarian architect who invented Rubik's Cube back in 1974. By the early 1980s, the tricky combination puzzle had become a cultural phenomenon. In total, about 500 million cubes have been sold. Fans competed in puzzle-solving races, hoping to break the current world record of 3.3 seconds. Well, there's a good rainy day activity and a challenge to boot. That is your late news for Saturday, November 9th. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. To keep up to date with all the latest news, head to our website at cbc.ca/BC. We'll see you tomorrow.